right, welcome. Welcome. We are slowly seeing people trickle in. I'm going to go ahead and hide non-video participants. If you would like Spanish interpretation, please switch over to the Spanish channel. If you go down on your Zoom window, you'll see an interpretation button. So en español, si gustarían escuchar esto en español, pueden oprimir el botón donde dice interpretación y seleccionar español. This is so exciting. Okay, we're just waiting for a couple more people to trickle in, and I'm going to hide non-video participants. So it's just me and Mariana. Lorena is our interpreter. And Ayla, if you would be willing to turn your video on. Hi. Okay. So I'm going to let Ayla talk because she's introducing the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LGBTQ Familias series. We're so excited to kick things off tonight with Mariana Galvez. This series is to amplify LGBT voices, whether that's parents who identify as LGBTQ+, or parents of children who identify. But we just want to kick off Pride Month honoring all the voices and all of the different identities within LGBTQ identity. So I just want to thank you all for being here. We are going to have Q&A at the end of today's program. So I just ask that if you have any questions, that you place them in the Q&A and not the chat, because the chat will get very flooded and we won't see them. So if you have any questions for the end of the program, you can just add them there. So I will introduce tonight's guest, Mariana Galvez. Hello, hello, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Mariana, here, let me pull up your bio, sorry. Sorry guys, I am having tech issues.
If you want, I could.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I have it. Born in Zacatecas, Mexico, and raised in South Los Angeles, California. Mariana is the mother of 3 children. Her eldest son is a transgender youth. She is a children's book author and illustrator based out of Whittier, California. So if you'd like to tell us more about your connection to LGBTQ identity and the community, we'd love to hear.
Hi, my eldest son is a transgender youth. He came out at around, I believe he was 8, that he was gay. And a few years later, he opened up and told me that he did not identify with, and I'm gonna get some things wrong. I'm learning. So if I say something that's not right, I'm still learning. This is all the terminology, all the words. I'm gonna get some stuff wrong. So just putting that out there right now. The gender he was assigned at birth, I believe that's how you say it. He did not identify with that. And yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to introduce tonight's facilitator and also the voice behind Latinx parenting, Leslie Priscilla. Leslie is a first-generation non-Black Chicana mother to 3 biracial children, ages 8, 2, and 1. She is the descendant of indigenous Tarahumara Raramuri and Spanish lineages who has resided on occupied Tangwa and Achahiman land, also known as Orange County, California, all of her life. Leslie shares her medicine by offering coaching, workshops, support, and advocacy for Latinx/Chicanx families, locally, nationally, and internationally, both in person and online via the Latinx Parenting Organization. She founded this bilingual organization and movement intentionally rooted in children's rights, social and racial justice, the individual and collective practice of nonviolence and reparenting, intergenerational and ancestral healing, cultural sustenance, and the active decolonization of oppressive practices in our families. So again, thank you all for joining tonight. I'm gonna let Leslie and Mariana take it away with this plática. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Ayla. I'm so grateful for you for that introduction. I always feel like I want to say what Bette Midler says in Hocus Pocus, where she's like, thank you for that marvelous introduction. And anyway, so you all know if I introduce or if I say that for future sessions of this, that's what it's from. Hi, Mariana.
Hi.
¿Cómo estás?
I'm good. Very nervous.
Yeah.
Very emotional. It's a topic very near and dear to my heart, and I'm very grateful to you for opening up this conversation, for having me here, because I've always felt it in my heart that I needed to share this.
Yeah. So I am so grateful to you and to your son, right, for your bravery, for existing, I think, in this cultura that doesn't always support our identities to the fullest unfolding, right? And so just so people know, Mariana and I met, I think we've only met once in person. We met at a park. We brought our children to the park. And before that, we had been talking. I found out that you were an illustrator. At the time, you created an ending chancla culture illustration for Latinx parenting in the fall. And I was like, this girl is talented. And so I was like, can you make some graphics for us? So if you go back into Latinx parenting feed and you see some of the graphics that have been created specifically for Latinx parenting, that is all Mariana. And we're going to be working together. This is an aside, obviously, but we're going to be working together throughout the rest of the year. And so you wear many hats. You have many roles in your life. And so I just wanted you to kind of share what some of those roles are, and especially with regards to you as a mother. So this is Latinx parenting. Obviously, we focus a lot on the parenting and the child raising and being in relationship with our children. And I'm going to slow down because I can feel Lorenia telling me that I'm talking too fast for the interpretation. But I would love to just hear, what are some of those roles? And then what does it mean for you to be a mother in your position as a mommy, right? As a mother raising your children. Two-parter kind
of. The roles. I was just telling my husband the other day that I had one of those mom meltdown moments where I'm like, I'm here with the kids all day and you get to leave and you get to see people, because we forget that, yes, we're helping raise these children, but our minds are constantly overloaded with remembering like appointments, and this is coming up, and I have to chauffeur my kids here, and they've got this social gathering, and on top of a pandemic, mind you, right? So now I've got, our life went from dropping the kids off and then coming back and getting my life together a little bit here to having them here full time, two rambunctious teenagers and a toddler that I homeschool. And so, on top of, so I came out with a book this year, a children's book. So it was just like illustrating and, finding time to be creative while also finding time to guide, be a homeschool teacher, help M because he's currently transitioning. My oldest son is transitioning. And also making sure that they all feel like I'm paying attention to them. I know my middle son might not feel it so much sometimes because I'm so involved with the little one and her homeschool, and then my eldest and his journey, that I feel and I know that sometimes, my middle son gets stuck in the middle.
Yeah, I can feel all of that holding that you're doing, and I just want to honor that, first of all, because I think a lot of that doesn't get talked about a lot, all of these different hats that we're constantly wearing. And it's not like we can put on one hat and then take it off and then put on the other one. It's like we have this like huge thing that's on our head that we have to be balancing and we have to be navigating. And so we have these added layers, like obviously, for me and some of the other parents that may be watching, we have this added layer of the pandemic, and you have a very unique layer of being a mother to a trans son. which is, why we're having this conversation really. And so I'm really curious about what that journey has been like for you. I know that you shared a little bit about it at the beginning, but, what has been, I guess, the process emotionally, anything that you would want to share about your story and his story, obviously, as much as he would allow to be shared.
I want to say that it's been a very lonely journey, a very difficult one. I said I was going to cry and it's already starting. We've gotten it from the judgment from all angles. We've gotten ridicule. He was on an all-girls soccer team. And one difficult memory was that one of the refs decided to, in Spanish, insult him, use a Spanish slur for an 8-year-old, and thought that his dad decided to show up that day and was standing right next to him, didn't know that was his dad. Dad heard it. And, you can imagine chaos ensued, but it was just really difficult to hear that out of an adult's voice. The restrooms have been a really difficult thing. One time they went to the movies and a woman put her hands on him and said, you can't go in there because you look like this and this is not for you. And that, these are things that he lives with. I've been told that he is the way he is because I've allowed it, that he's needed therapy to change him, to convert him. He used to go to a Catholic school. That was another difficult layer. And this all started, so the conscious parenting, I grew up in a very traditional Catholic, strict home, with very little patience for children, very little compassion or understanding. It was always like the adults make the rules and we this and you follow them and that's that, and you stay quiet and sit down and know your role, you're a woman. And so when my son, I'm going a little bit backwards here, he was a straight A student, did great in school. 7th grade rolls around, when that's, those preteen years, the teenage years are coming up. And his GPA dropped down to like a 1.5, I think. And that was a big red flag. I was like, whoa, what's going on? What's happening? And years later, when we're having a conversation about that, he told me that he was in a setting where he felt judged. He was being told in his school that he was going to go to hell. Right. Because of who he is. And he was not going to change that. And so that meant, as a 12-year-old child, like, I'm going to hell. And this is who I am. Like, I didn't pick this. This is who I am. And I'm being told I'm a bad person. So, at that point, it's difficult to concentrate on school. It's difficult to be a normal child when you're being told these things, right? And then you add to that layer, his, and again, let me go back a little bit on my life story. I co-parent with his dad. So we separated when he was, I believe, like 3 years old, which was also around the time when I knew that he didn't identify with a gender. It was Halloween, I believe. I put him in a Dorothy costume and he was like, Mom, I don't like dresses. I want it to be a car. And it clicked at that moment. Like, my mama heart knew. And so I'm separating with his dad, and dad does not support at all. Not supportive. My son wanted to cut his hair short around 8 years old. Dad did not allow it. So my son did it, cut his hair. Dad, I believe, took his phone away. He was grounded, but he kept cutting his hair. And so the punishments continued for years.
Mm.
This was our life. I'm going to cut my hair. And his response was, well, I'm going to manage you. And it became a thing because we share custody. So the week that he was going to dad's, it was this dreaded, oh, I'm going to go and my phone's going to get taken and I'm going to be in trouble because I cut my hair, because this is how I identify, because this is me. And so, and then the phone calls would come in. You allow this, you encourage it, you are to blame.
Mm.
And so then the punishments then were extended. You're not getting your phone for a month. You're not going to get clothes. You're not going to the movies. You're not joining us to get ice cream. You're not. And then it was this exclusion.
Uh-oh. I don't know what happened. I think we might have lost Mariana. Ayla, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, just making sure it wasn't my internet. We may have lost Mariana for a second. So bear with us, folks. Thank you so much for staying on. And I just want to encourage everybody to hold the gravity and to hold everything that Mariana has shared so far has been so powerful and maybe possibly painful and activating for us. So I encourage you at this point to drink some water if you have water around, stretch if possible. And we're just going to give Mariana a few minutes to try to come back in. Would love to hear any reflections that anybody in the audience is having around what you're holding, what you are experiencing in your own bodies as you listen to Mariana's story about raising a transgender youth. So would love to see, I know that a lot of you sent love already in the comments, holding your sadness, sending love to Mariana, which we'll acknowledge again shortly when she comes back in. But wondering how this is landing for folks. And hopefully we can get her back on soon. She did mention that she has a new computer. So we were both lamenting over us having new computers and not knowing what to do with them right now. Yes, Francis is saying, so hard to hear the lack of support. Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, you know, I actually am realizing that I didn't introduce myself. So for those of you that are like, who is this person? My name is Leslie Priscilla. I think Ayla did introduce me at the beginning, but I'm the founder of Latinx Parenting. And I do want to share a little bit about why I created this particular series. And, you know, Latinx Parenting was created out of a need for me to have more representation. And as Latinx Parenting kind of began to grow, I started to realize and have it acknowledged by other people that, you know, there were areas within Latinx culture, within Latinx families that I could not address on my own, which I already knew. Like I know that I do not have the perspective of being a brown father, for example, when we did the Brown Fatherhood series. And so the goal is to really look at what gaps there are. And so I encourage everybody that's in the audience, obviously, to also give us feedback about what kinds of programming you would like to see, what kinds of workshops you would like to see, because this is definitely one of the ones that I knew was needed. Seeing that we're trying to get Mariana back on, but this is one of the ones that was needed. And actually right after the Brown Fatherhood series, you know, not with the acknowledgement that it was Pride Month at all, but it happens to be Pride Month. So I said, I want to highlight families because I have close friends also that have children that identify as trans. And so I know how difficult, how painful of an experience it can be and how often those stories are not told. And so that's kind of the idea behind this series. You know, I hold that this may be painful for some of you, that some of you may identify with the role of being a parent to a trans youth or to a queer LGBTQ child. And so I, you know, I encourage you to reach out to us if any of this is resonating. And yeah. Let me ask Ayla to come back in. We are trying. Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Yep,
So,
typical errors. Mercury's in retrograde, everybody.
yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, Ayla, if anything has kind of landed for you from what Mariana has been saying. Maybe you and I, in the meantime, can kind of reflect back.
Yeah, absolutely. Co-parenting and having your parent or your partner not necessarily be on the same side as you, and wanting to support your child while also like navigating co-parenthood, that's tough. And so holding space for Mariana for having to go through that and feeling like, that she was the only advocate for her child.
Yeah.
Wondering if anyone else has a similar experience.
Yeah. I was really struck by that too. And I was kind of bummed because she was like moving us through that process. I mean, it's a bummer that she like wasn't able to stay out for a little bit, but that's another layer, you know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to make the acknowledgement that the gender that my child was assigned at birth is not the gender that they identify with, but then to have their parent, which for me is like half of my child, right? Like the half that I co-created this being with biologically is not supportive of their identity or their choices. And so I think for me, like as a mama bear, right, like as somebody who, and Mariana was talking about, changing kind of the ideas of like what's acceptable and like the judgments that she's received. My thought is like that would create so much anger for me, that would create so much like wanting to fight. So hey, Mercury retrograde.
Oh, now you're on mute.
Unmute there.
Oh, there you go. Yay. So
I wanted a computer, so I knew it. I knew it happened to me.
We were both at the very beginning, we were like, we're on new computers. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. But Mercury retrograde messes with technology. So here we are. But Ayla and I were just kind of reflecting back on some of what you were sharing at the end and how, as myself as a mother, having the experience of, if my child identified as a gender outside of whatever they were assigned at birth, then that would be one layer of something to face and acknowledge, right? And so I think that would probably be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that would probably have been easier for you had you not had this resistance, probably not only from your co-parent who made it that much harder every step of the way, but then also from all of these external forces, which a lot of them have to do with our culture, with the culture that we're bringing up these children in. And so I would love for you to expand on that and how you have been able to move through that.
I think as a mother, you reach this point where it's like, it's me, it's my child or the world. And it's my child 100% every single time. Every single time.
Yes.
I was scared. Both times when he came out as gay and when he came out as a transgender youth, I'm not gonna lie, it felt like somebody pulled a rug from under me. It was just kind of terrifying because I knew I was gonna support him, but I didn't know how. And I didn't want to mess him up along the way. It's kind of like when you have a newborn where you're just like, what do I do? How do I feed them? How do I not, break their arm off?
Yeah.
But I knew that I was going to ride hard for him this entire time. And I knew that people were going to fall off.
Yeah.
And I accepted that in that moment. In that moment, I knew not everyone is going to be on board with us. And whoever goes is just going to have to go because I'm not turning my back on you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But that was really difficult when his entire dad's family was not on board. You would think, or when because here's the thing, they will say they are, and then they won't accept the pronouns, and they'll say they support, but then they refuse to use his name, his preferred name. They say they'll support him, but then, you know, there's all these conditions. So then you're not supporting him. You're not there for him. You're just saying you are, or you know, I don't know. I can't speak for them, but I know it's been really difficult. And he's had me as a mama bear, and will continue to have me as a mama bear in as he transitions, because this is another level, right? So he is currently he started hormone therapy last year. That's some.
Uh-oh, it looks like Mariana either froze or we lost her again. I know. Oh no, hopefully she just froze. Hey, Ayla.
I'm back.
Oh my goodness, Mariana, come back. It's hard because it's so juicy and I'm like, oh. So, but this is the world that we're living in right now, y'all. This is like Zoom world right now. So
this is actually where Mariana paused. We kind of talked a little bit about this in Healing the Mother Wound workshop a few weeks back. The idea of a lot of people were asking, you know, how do you get family members on board to I guess your way of conscious parenting? And this is conscious parenting and accepting an identity that, you know, in our society is not accepted. You know, how do you advocate for your outer child? You know, you advocate for your inner child. Now, how do you advocate for your outer child?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And yeah, Mariana was just speaking to this, and I can see that now you're on your phone, I think.
I am. I'm giving up my computer. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I cannot believe I'm having trouble today. Of all days.
We can hear you. We can hear you well.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Sorry.
You're okay.
Did you ask a question?
Ayla was just kind of tying back like the internal work that has to happen, right? Like how we're talking about how, you know, you as a mama bear have to be very mindful. And this is, you know, again, stop me if I'm wrong, but like you have to be very, very mindful of the internal processes that you're holding and how this is activating like you, right? As the mama bear, and also be able to give your child the tools to navigate this in a way that's empowering to them, right? Like we can't go around like and like shoot the family members that are not accepting of them. And you know, we do need to be able to model, because it's still, you know, your son is young still, right? Like we're still modeling, setting those limits around how they want to be spoken to, the pronouns, all of that. Yeah. So I'm wondering, you know, there's just so many layers, I think, to your experience, Mariana, and I'm so interested in all of them. I think this could easily be like a 3-hour conversation. But I think, you know, what are some of the, because you've talked about the obstacle of having the extended family not accepting, right? Saying that they are accepting and then doing things that are not accepting. What other obstacles have you and your son experienced, I think, in this, in how this has been unfolding?
I think that one so far has been the biggest one. Mm-hmm. Getting his family to understand and support him. And also to want to be open-minded. Sometimes I don't even think he wants them to, like, he understands that they come from a different generation, especially his grandparents. He understands that, you know, it's difficult, especially when you're so set in your belief system to change that. But I think he just wishes that they were more open-minded and more willing to open up dialogue and conversation to hear his perspective on his identity. right? Because when he came out to me both times, I don't think I had friends that were gay, and I definitely didn't have friends that were transgender. And so I had to take 10 steps back before really addressing everything, to research. And that's how I found you. That's how I found your page, because that was the moment, like, you come to this fork in the road and you go, okay, this way that I've been doing things, this taking things away from him, this punishing, this not timeouts anymore when they're teenagers, grounding, it's not working. It's not working. And not only is it not working, he's taking it, right? He said, I'm going to take the punishment because I'm still going to do what I want. Right? So then you come to this, oh, the power went out in our block. Sorry. So it wasn't my computer. The power's out in our block. Okay. Yeah. So once you get to those teenage years, you know, that control that traditional parenting has goes out the window, right? Because it got to the point where when he was at dad's one week, he ran away. And he called me from a McDonald's in the middle of the night. And he's like, Mom, I can't take that anymore. I don't want to be there. And at that point, that's where you reflect and go, okay, all of this needs to go out in the trash. And we have to start from scratch. And this is where I started researching conscious parenting. This is when I started reading up on different ways to connect with my children, right? Because also when they turn into teenagers, like, the conversations stop. You know, when your children are toddlers, you talk and you play and there's hugs and there's connection. But as they become teenagers, because I don't know, we start placing these expectations on them, that starts to kind of get severed. And it's really difficult to get back. From personal experience, it's very difficult to open up that dialogue again. Especially because, well, for me, when I switched over to conscious parenting, my kids were like, well, you used to take our things away. What makes this any different? Like, what are you trying to pull? You know, so they almost didn't believe me that I was trying to change. And it took, I would say, like 3-4 years to gain their trust, to open up.
Oh, are you there, Mariana? You're still there.
Our block, the lights went off on our block, so it's just messing everything up. But I'm still here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, you were speaking on the connection and how they were doubting you at first. And it's funny that you say that, because at the very beginning of the classes, sometimes I'll say, like, if you start to shift things and if you start to test, you know, some of these strategies, some of these, like, just attuning to them, they might start to push you a little bit more than they have in the past, because they want to see if this is for real, right? Like, like, it could get harder before it gets easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I'm still, like, in that area with my.
Uh-oh, you muted accidentally, I think.
I was saying that I'm still kind of there with my middle son. My oldest and I have had a lot of time, especially because of his journey, to open up and communicate. My middle son, I hate to call him that, and I are still working on that. Victoria, my youngest, has had that this entire time. She is so lucky, you know. She's getting to reap all the benefits and the reward from me having unpacked all of this.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, about the relationship that you're kind of like restoring, right? And that moment where he calls you in the middle of the night from a McDonald's, and like all of the things that probably were running through your head at the time. And what I can't get away from is how fortunate he is to be able to call anybody, much less his parent, like his mother, right? And so what I'm just like celebrating, right? Because I feel like a lot of these experiences are full of grief, like grief with having to shed people that you thought would be there for you and would be able to support you, shedding possibly, you know, relationships with family members, et cetera. Like so much of these experiences feel ridden with grief sometimes, from what I've seen and what I've read, obviously, but wanting to really like celebrate the fact that he called you, you know, he was able to be himself with you. He has been able to be himself with you, that you were attuned enough when he was wanting to be a car for Halloween, that you weren't like, no, that's for boys, right? Like you weren't like, no, you know, it has to be this way. Because I know that there's a lot of people in Latinx culture, in you know, in our cultura, that just do not accept, you know. And so before we get to questions, I really wanted to ask you, first of all, what I really wanted to ask you was, what are some of the beautiful things, right? Because I'm talking about how some of this is so full of grief sometimes. What are some of the like beautiful things that you have learned being in relationship with your son, right, through this process? What are some of the things that you celebrate about this journey for you and for him?
His confidence. His confidence in the process of getting him top surgery, hopefully this summer. He's gone through a lot of lengths to do what he can to have the body that he wants, that he identifies with. And so he like slouches and he wears dark shirts and he wears layers of shirts and he holds his head down. And I know that once we get through this, his head is just gonna get really high. And he's going to be able to wear the shirts that he wants, and he's going to be able to smile from ear to ear, and he'll be able to. We're also working on getting his name changed so that when they announce he'll be a senior next year in high school. So I'm hoping we can get his name, his preferred name, so that they can announce it when he gets his diploma. And I know he's going to walk up there and very happy. So I think it's his joy that he can be himself, that he's got someone that supports him, that he's not alone. I think that's the most beautiful thing to me.
That's incredible. That's so exciting. I can't wait until that happens for him and for you to witness that.
Thank you.
So, and I think, you know, just overall, because we know, like, this is something that we know, that it is a batalla, you know, a battle to create acceptance in our cultura around being queer, around being trans, around being in non, you know, heteronormative relationships, or wanting different things for ourselves outside of that binary. What is your vision for Latinx familias who have children that identify as queer or trans, gay, lesbian, bisexual, etc.? And, you know, for anybody, right, for any family that has this experience, what is your vision for us as a cultura?
My vision is that we will be able to create community, because the last 10 years for me have with M's journey have been some of the loneliest in motherhood, right? Because we have support for breastfeeding, we have support for working mothers, we have support for so many things, but very little for mothers that have queer children, because it's embarrassing, because we can be ostracized, because we can be excluded, right? So we keep it, we hold it. And so it's lonely. And so I'm hoping that this opens up dialogue so that there's connection, there's community. Porque with community se hace la fuerza.
Yes, and that's the intention, right? That's
be able to change laws.
Yes. Yes, from the personal to the political. Right? Whew. That's a big vision. You know, that's a big vision. And at the same time, it's not impossible, you know, that we create more of these conversations, that we create more of these spaces where not just parents can be themselves. Like one of my friends runs a homeschooling cooperative, Unidos, right? They have a queer club for the kids. And so that experience of feeling alone is not just for, there you are. It's not just for the parents, right? This is for everybody. This is for everybody to be able to feel held and to feel seen. And then, you know, before we jump into questions, because I know that people are going to be asking questions in the Q&A, I wanted to ask you if there are any resources in particular that have been supportive for you or for your son, and anything else that you would want to share about what you have going on, not just as a mommy, but also as an illustrator.
Resources right now for us, even though we have been going through this for the last 10 years, it's still really new to us. We didn't really start his journey until like 2 years ago. So it's been a lifelong, but also a very short journey, because we're just now getting into but so the only ones right now are like his medical team at Kaiser. They've all been really wonderful. Outside of that, we haven't really. I did want to say that to my friends Carmen and Ryan, who I met through IG when I opened up about M's journey. They have been the ones sending me articles about changing his name, about this process, about his transitioning. They've been the ones holding me this entire time. So I just wanted to say thank you to them.
Yes, because we're always, and that's really supportive for me too, because, you know, we're always, if we're not in those situations, we always want to make sure that we are supporting in ways that are uplifting and in ways that are concrete. And so that seems like something that's very concrete, right? Is, you know, even sending an article or just like dropping a note in acknowledgement of the fact that you were going through this process. Yeah. So shout out to Ryan and to Carmen.
And to Marianne.
And to Marianne.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, if it's okay with you, I would like to open it up to any questions that have come in. We're about 15 minutes out from the end of the hour. And Ayla, do we have any questions that have come in so far?
No, I think we've all just been in awe of you, Mariana. So no, there hasn't been any questions. If anyone does, feel free to add it to the Q&A at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep asking questions because I have others.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know.
Can I talk about his transition journey in case it can help anybody?
Please.
Because I know that was something that I didn't know. What the process was. So the steps that we've done in California, Southern California, so states, I don't know how it is across the US or in other countries, but I know in Southern California, the process for us was to see his primary care physician and let them know that he did not identify with, referred us to a psychiatrist. And what happens is that he, a total of 6 sessions. They were an hour long. And then they decided to give him for the hormone treatment. And then after the psychiatrist gave us the okay, and the endocrinologist is the one that has been helping us with his testosterone treatment. It started at a very low dose. I believe it was monthly at the time, and right now we're up to a higher dose, and it's every 2 weeks. And I believe as he gets older, it'll increase frequency and dosage. And we're kind of like going through the same process again with the top surgery. We have to go back to his psychiatrist, a couple more sessions with her to get the okay, and then we'll meet with the surgeon and move forward there. So we're kind of, that's where our journey is with him.
Wow. That's like a lot of coordination. Like I know that sounds like silly, but I'm just like, all of that, like all the booking appointments and then the taking to appointments, like that is so much labor for you as a mommy, like, and especially knowing that you have 2 other children, you know, younger children. So I just want to commend you and let you know how much I admire you as a mommy, not just as like any mommy, right? As a mommy who is so intentional, who is a conscious mother. Did we lose her again? Where are you, Mariana?
No, I'm here.
Okay. So as somebody who is a conscious mother, as somebody who, you know, whose priority is to be that protective mama bear for him and be able to guide him through this world that is not always going to be supportive, right? Like I think, and I say this all the time, it's like we are going, with regards to like chancla culture and like the ways that we treat, you know, girls and boys and all of these layers around gender, we're not going to see the end of prejudice and oppression on marginalized groups in our lifetime. But all of these things that we are setting down, all of the, you know, the choice that you have made to prioritize the connection, to prioritize the safety for him, and his ability to be able to have an open relationship with you and communication, this is the groundwork. You know, this is setting the foundation for that greater vision that you spoke of earlier. So I'm just in awe of you. I'm in awe of him for being able to speak his truth. And then somebody, Ayla, we can, if you want to come back in, there was a question that came in.
It wasn't a question, it was actually a comment from Frankie saying, as a trans Latinx man who got punched in the face by my dad when I came out at 17, this is bringing me so much joy and hope for our trans youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. I do see one question in the Q&A. Is it okay if I read it, Ayla? Do you see it?
Oh, I completely missed that. Is he with you now 100% of the time or continues to go to his dad?
Right now, he's with me 100% of the time. We still have custody, but he refuses to go. So I'm not going to make him be in a place he doesn't feel comfortable. And we gave that as best as we can.
Yeah. That must be, you know, also because I know a lot of this, like this is like new, you know, like there have been LGBTQ issues to address forever, but I think in Latinx culture, this past generation, we are finally starting to acknowledge the harm, right? Like we're starting to acknowledge the harm that it creates for our youth. And the way that I see this is a matter of life and death. Like there have been youth that have not made it beyond their youth because of oppressive practices in their families that continue to not accept, that continue to judge, not respect. You know, people have been ostracized from their families. There's one thing to like feel isolated, but then there's very real cases where children, teenagers have been completely just like, you are no longer my child. You know, you are no longer a part of this family because you identify this way. And there have been, you know, I don't know exactly what the stats are around it, but there have been cases, like a lot of cases that have resulted in the death of some of our youth.
Yeah.
And so for me, this is,
and that's something.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and that has been, you know, and that's been my driving force. And that's something that I've mentioned to his dad and dad's side of the family. Like my child is not going to be a statistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's very real, you know, and it's very, very unfortunate. And we don't like to talk about it. You know, we don't like to talk about all of the ways in which, like the ways that we accept our cultures, you know, holding on to these very archaic beliefs around what niñas should be like, what niños should be like we don't talk about the harm that can cause, like the very real emotional damage that causes them, and also us, you know, also us as families and as communities, and how we are not setting, you know, I think these conversations are, but like overall, the culture is not amenable to be able to accept these different narratives and experiences and embodiments. And so hopefully that's being changed, right? Hopefully that is what we are pushing to shift for them. And so I'm wondering, you know, this is kind of aligned with the vision, but I'm wondering what his like hopes and dreams are. Like, what does he want? Like, what has he communicated that would feel safe for you, obviously, to share, that he wants, you know, that he kind of sees for himself?
He's always expressed that he just wants to be able to walk in the world as he sees himself. He wants to be able to be accepted for who he is. And that's it. And to pursue his dreams, and to receive healthcare, and to find somebody he cares about, and one day get married. We want. And I think people forget that. You know, I don't understand why the LGBTQ community is set aside as if, you know, like if they were born with like an extra limb or I don't know.
Yeah.
They're just like us.
Yes, I know. I was going to say, I was like, that's
dreams.
exactly what everybody wants. You know, that's exactly what everybody, you know, aside from them getting married, I don't know if everybody wants to get married, but we just want to be able to live our lives. We just want to be able to live our lives and unfold the way that we were meant to unfold on earth. Somebody, and Ayla, if you want to read off this question that came in the chat.
Yeah, someone is asking, can you say more about your earlier conversations with your son when he shared with you that he wanted to go through the transition process?
They wanted me to repeat the transition process?
Yeah, if you can share more about the conversations. So they asked, can you say more about your earlier conversations with your son when he shared with you that he wanted to go through the transition process? So what was that dynamic like between mother and son when you learned about that?
It was scary. It was frightening. Like I had mentioned earlier, because I didn't have anyone to turn to. It was scary in the sense that I didn't want to steer him down the wrong path or hurt him in any way. So that was the scariest part of it. But he knows, and I've always been very supportive. So I remember telling him, I said, let me find out, let me do some research online and talk with your primary care physician and see if they have any information. And I remember I opened up on Instagram about it, and that's when I came into contact with a few friends who guided me as well. But it's always been very supportive, and especially when you open up. And that's why I love this dialogue, and that's why I love this series, because a lot of the times we find ourselves kind of feeling stuck and not knowing where to turn, because there aren't conversations like these and there isn't information out there, right? So I had to find all this out as we went along. There was no printout, or especially because all the states vary, it's different everywhere. So it's been learn as you go, but always holding him as my priority, his health, his mental health, which is just as important as his physical health, but always taking his yeah.
Well, I want to ditto Leslie's sentiments and say I am so deeply just admiring you for all of it, to not know what to do or what's next, but to move anyway. And, your only commitment is just to be there. That's huge. And so navigating conscious parenting is one thing. And that's a journey within itself, but then to do so with this layer and still committing to being there, it's huge. So I hope you hold on to that in the moments where you may, I'm sure it's been not a straight shot journey. So when you do have those moments, I hope you remember that. So I'm gonna just ask the audience one more time if there's any other questions before we close out.
Yes, and I wanted to read a comment by Carla in the chat that says, "Thank you, Mariana, you're an amazing mama." And then somebody earlier had shared that you were giving strong Jenny Rivera vibes, which I think is a huge compliment. So
I love that. Is it the hoops?
Yes. Can you please give us your best Jenny Rivera impression right now?
Oh my God, I could not do it.
You're like, that was not a part of the questions that you sent me, Leslie. So that's not a fair one. But yes, I'm so grateful for you, Mariana. And I'm so, I do want people to know, outside of a mother, if you came in late and you missed the introduction, Mariana is also she's a children's book author now. She just had a book come out with Little Libros. What is the title of the book again? It's the little, I know what
Little
it is.
Astrology Catrinas, a zodiac book.
Yay! Little Astrology Catrinas, illustrated by Mariana Galvez. It's so exciting. I'm so proud.
I wanted to reimagine Catrinas. And my oldest son was actually the inspiration, mind you. He's a Capricorn. And so I always, and I was just like, what would it look like if a Catrina that was a Capricorn would dress up, right? And so that idea kind of took off, right? Because all the different astrological signs have strengths and weaknesses, but we're focusing on the strengths. And so I wanted to illustrate them in their strengths. I wanted to show them as their astrological signs. And I wanted to try something new and whimsical and vibrant and fun.
Yes, that's so beautiful. I can't wait to have that book, to own that book, and to introduce it to my children too. And again, Mariana is going to be working closer with us, hopefully for the remainder of this year and beyond, on some illustrations for Latinx parenting. So I'm so grateful for all of your gifts, for all of your talents, for all of your dedication, your commitment to your son, to your other two children. I hope to see you soon because you don't live very far.
Yes. Thank you for having.
Yes, so grateful for you. Thank you to everybody for being here. Christy in the chat says, thank you for sharing your story, sending so much love and good wishes for your son's transition, witnessing the power of familias living their truth. Thank you for sharing your story, says Francis Esparza. And then Carla says, I just wish we could normalize that what we've been told is normal isn't normal. Normal is letting our children be their authentic selves and love and support them. This was awesome. Thank you. Yes. And I think that's a beautiful way to close. That this, it definitely has to do with LGBTQ familias, but I think the lessons from the paradigm shifts that are happening apply overall, right? It's about letting children unfold into whoever they're supposed to be unfolding into, not being an additional barrier for them and not being oppressive to them. So thank you all for being here this evening with us. This recording is going to be made available on the Teachable page, and so you'll be able to go back and watch it. Please share the link for the remainder of the conversaciones. They are free and you have access to all of them, and we'll have access to the Spanish recording as well, hopefully. And so, definitely share it with your elders, even if they are Spanish speaking. They will be able to listen, and hopefully we will be able to change some minds and some hearts, so that we can, continue to raise children consciously, and have a really beautiful, thriving cultura. So thank you, Ayla. Thank you, Lorenia. And thank you, Lorenia's mom, Lorenia, also named Lorenia. Mariana, I will talk to you very soon. And thank you all. I hope you all have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.